So now, where we're at with this stage of the project is we are going to go over this. The purpose of the video is going to show you how to use these numbers and everything that you've put together to your advantage so that we can compile your top five list using like empirical, like numerical, real data. So it's more objective than or as objective as we can possibly make it, right? And so the first thing we have to talk about with this is we have to talk about assigning things a weight, okay? And so so I'm taking into consideration and for granted that you've got all your information compiled at this point. You're watching this because you're like, all right, now what? Excuse me. So if that's the case, then what you have is you have this box in your chart that says weight up here, right? Mine are all filled in. Yours should be blank at this point. And so what you want to do is you want to figure out of 100%, how much weight, in other words, how much importance do you want to give each category. So I've got 7 different metrics, right? I've got percents of households that purchase the fruit, historic average cost per serving, current cost per serving, preference of real teenagers, calories per serving, ease of preparation, and carbon footprint. And so what I had to do when I was looking at this is I had to say, okay, well, what are the things that are really important to me? And the thing that I found most important to me was this preference of real teenagers. And I'm actually going to fix this. This should say 25%. So if you have a digital copy of this or a paper copy of this, fix that. So it says 25. So I said that should be about a quarter of the survey, because if kids don't like to eat something, then what's the point of getting it for them, right? And then I thought, well, the next important thing is, can I afford what I'm buying, right? And can I afford what I'm buying now? All right. And so that would be the current cost per serving, right? And so that's, that I gave it almost as much importance as the preference. So that's 20%. And then with that, I split up, and then my next two 15%ers are the carbon footprint, because I think that's important. I don't think we should wreck the planet so that we can, have fresh fruit all the time, right? Because we do have things we can eat that are much closer. And then calories per serving, because I think caloric intake is important, right? And then the last 3, I gave 5% for ease of preparation, so not that important, but needs to be taken into consideration. Historic average cost per serving, just because it's kind of nice to know that, like, and this is from about 5 years ago, what things used to cost and what they cost now, and you can kind of say, oh well, this continues to be expensive, or this has gone down in price, and and I think that does impact things. And then the last thing is the percent of households that purchase the fruit, right? And so, and the reason I have that on there is because that's sort of an indicator that they're popular for a reason. They're popular because they're affordable, and they're popular because kids will eat them, right? And so, so that's how I came up with my weights. And so you'll do the same thing, and then once you have your weights, you just add them all up and make sure you get to make sure you get to 100%. That's what you should get at. All right. And so that's the very first thing you should do. All right. Now, the next thing you have to do is we have to rank our data. We have to start taking our data, and we got to start figuring out what do we do with it. And so for each metric, you go through it and you say, okay, I'm going to assign this a ranking based on from 7 being the best to 1 being the worst, because what we're going to do is we're going to add these up, and so the number that is the largest when we add everything up is going to be our winner. All right. So for this one, I figured it's probably more desirable to be in more households, because that means it's popular, right? So that means bananas would get a 7 because there's 7 candidates, so that gets the top billing, and then going down like this, right? 4, 3, 2, 1. Hopefully that makes sense, right? This one's in order, so it's easy to see. Now the next one, historic average cost per serving, I would say that the cheaper something is historically, that's good, because that means that hopefully it will remain affordable. And the one that's historically the cheapest is watermelon, so that we will give a 7. Um, Close behind it is bananas with a 6. Bananas are usually relatively affordable, right? Oranges then are in fifth place with 54 cents, and then up to 60 cents a serving would put that in fourth place for apples. And then we have 3, 2, and 1 finishing out with grapes, strawberries, and raspberries, which are historically more expensive. Um, okay, now current cost per serving where I shop. So this is like what things cost now per serving. All right. So if you look at this, right, every time, so this means what are you paying every time you eat a typical serving of this stuff, right? And again, the cheapest of all of these is watermelon, right? And so watermelon gets a 7. And then orange is not far behind with a 6. And then, or sorry, my bad, I completely missed bananas. Bananas are actually the cheapest, right? So bananas would get the 7. Watermelon would then get the 6, and oranges would get 5, right? And then apples round off the stuff that's in the dollar area with a 4, all right. And then you've got a dollar serving, so right on a dollar is 3. That's strawberries, and then 2 for grapes, right? Grapes are not cheap, and raspberries are even less cheap, right? And so there you go. So we've got that compiled. Now, preference of real teenagers, we need the data for this one. So here is my data that I collected from my surveys. Remember, you need to have 25 valid surveys. Apple got 99 points. Now, remember, this is the opposite of what we're doing here because when I did the survey, I did rank 1 through 7. So 1 being your favorite. So the numbers that are the lowest are the ones that are going to be good. They're going to be the ones that are the most preferred, right? So orange is 85. Let's see, this next one's 71, and that's watermelon. All right, watermelon. And then we have grapes at 69, and raspberries at 87, and then strawberries at 43. Okay. And so if I rank these, right, it would be the lowest number means it's the most popular. So strawberries are going to get my 7, all right, with 43. And then the next one is grapes. They're going to get 6. And then watermelon's going to get 5. And then the next one is oranges. So those get 4. And then raspberries would get 3. And then 2 and 1 with apples and bananas. All right. Calories per serving, same deal. Lower calorie is probably considered preferable. So strawberries would win that, which I found kind of surprising, but they are pretty low in calories. All right, and so that is going to get my 7, and then we have a tie for 6th place between grapes and oranges, which means that we're going to skip 5th place when we go to raspberries, and we're going to go right to 4th place. Okay, that's what you do when you have a tie. And then 3rd place would be apples, 2nd place would be watermelon, and 1st place would be bananas. Or sorry, last place would be bananas. So 7 is 1st place, 1 is last place. All right, it seems a little backwards, but that's how it goes. This ease of preparation, this is what I put this together, and I said easiest to hardest. Well, the easiest something is to prepare is probably considered, preferable. And the easiest thing to prepare is raspberries because literally all you do is rinse them. Grapes, you got to rinse them and then pull them off the thing before you eat them. Strawberries, you got to rinse them and pull the stems out and cut them, right? Apples, a little harder to prep if you're giving it to, a kid. You got to slice it up and get the seeds out. Bananas, and apples could have been kind of interchangeable there. It doesn't really matter too much. Oranges, obviously, if any of you have ever peeled an orange, it's a bit of an undertaking. And then, watermelon, you've got to, depending on how you serve it, if you just serve slices, it's not super difficult, but you do need a pretty large knife, and it's something that you absolutely have to have a parent do, right? Not a little kid, right? And so that's how I came up with my rankings. So raspberries are going to get a 7 here. Grapes get a 6, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for that. And then the carbon footprint is how far are these things flying. And so the less it flies, the better, because that means less fossil fuels are being used and less, pollution and everything, right? So oranges, get the nod on this one, and they get a 7. And then the next ones is we're going to have two ties for sixth place, right? So we got that and that, which puts us to fourth. And then we have a three-way tie for fourth, right? So we got 4, 4, 4, and then that would put bananas at 1. All right, because we used up 3, so we used 4, 3, and 2 up for that. And those are all my metrics, all right? And that's how we're doing it. And so now the last thing you're going to do, all right? The last thing we're going to do is we are going to take that and we're going to multiply these by the decimal equivalents of these percents. So this would be 0.1. This would be 0.1. This is 0.2, right? You get the idea. 0.25. And then this is 0.15. And this is over here. This is going to be 0.05. All right. And then the last one, 0.15. Okay. And what you'll find doing these is that some of these are really easy to multiply. Like whenever you multiply anything by 0.1, it's basically like you're multiplying it by 1, and then you just move the decimal point over. So 7 times 0.1 is just 0.7. So that would make this 0.6, 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, and 0.1, right? Pretty easy. We'll do the other 10%er because it's going to be the same thing. So this is 0.7, 0.6. I'm going to put everything over here. 0.5. We'll move you there. 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and 0.1. Right? And those are our points, right? And so the lower points are for the ones that aren't as popular, right? Who we're not as happy with. Now, this one, we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to double it after we move it because 20% is 10% twice. So if we figure out what 10% is, and then just double it. Now, you can always just put this in a calculator, right? 6 times 0.2, right? Well, 10% of that would be 0.6, and if you double it, it's 1.2, right? And if you don't have good number sense, then obviously this isn't going to work for you, right? But that's, that's ideally what we want you doing, all right? This one's going to be 0.6. This one's going to be 0.8. This one's going to be 0.2. This one is going to be 1.4. This one will be 0.4. And this one will be 1.0. All right, preference of real teenagers. All right, so this one's 25%. So this one's a little trickier to do. All right, so I would recommend for this one just go ahead and use a calculator, and then that will work. My kingdom for a school where kids show up on time. You guys. All right, so doing the 0.25 times that. If we start with strawberries, right, then that's going to be 7 times 0.25 is going to give us 1.75, right? And we'll just kind of go through all these like that. So that's 1.75. 3 times 0.25 is 0.75. This is going to be 1.5. 1 is just going to be 0.25, right? 2 is going to be 0.5. All right, 4 is going to be 1.0, and then 5 is going to be 1.25. And those are all your rankings for that. All right, and then for these last couple, so for 15%, we will do the 10% and then half of that, right? So if you do 10% of 7 is 0.7, and then half of that would give it another 0.35, right? So that would be 1.05, right? 6 would be 0.3 plus, 0.6 plus 0.3, so 0.9. And then we have another one here. We have 0.9, and then we skip the 4. So 4 times that is going to be 0.6. The 3 is going to be 0.45. 2 is going to be 0.3, and then 1 is easy and 0.15, right? And then the last one, the last two, the last page, right? This is just 5%. So you figure out your 10% and go half of that. So this is 0.35. This is 0.3. This is 0.25. This is 0.2. This is 0.15. This is 0.1, and this is 0.05. And then for the carbon footprint, if we look at the one we already did, the 15, you can just use those same numbers, right? So 7's 1.05, right? Because we figured that out. And then the other one, 6, was 0.9. We have 2 of those. And we have a whole pile of 4s. Well, 4 was 0.6, so 0.6, 0.6, and 0.6, and then 1's easy, and that's 0.15. And so now your last step is you're going to basically make you're going to, say, okay, here's what we got. We have our bananas, we have our apples, our oranges, we have strawberries. I'm just trying to remember these. Grapes, raspberries, and watermelon. And so now what you're going to do is you're going to take all your values. So you'll go like, metric 1, and you'll put your numbers in, and metric 2, metric 3, metric 4, metric 5, metric 6, metric 7. And then you're going to add them up, and you're going to have a total. And your highest number is going to tell you the one that's the winner, and then you'll come up with that, all right? And so then when you look at, when I show you and go through it with you, the video of my finished product, you'll see that I did that, and I put that number on the bottom. And after doing all of that, right, and I'll just share my numbers with you, I came up with, for bananas, I had 3.55 for my total. For apples, I had 3.25. For oranges, I had 4.55. For strawberries, I had 4.8. For grapes, I had 4.2. For raspberries, I had 2.55, and for watermelon, I had 4.45. And so using that, right, I determined that, well, this is my number 1, right? It's strawberries, right? Not surprising, right? Number 2 is oranges, which I did find a little surprising. Number 3 is watermelon, not surprising. Number 4, then we would go down to the last one that's in the 4s, and which would be grapes, which again, not surprising. And then 5th was bananas. So it's kind of disappointing that apples and raspberries, which are actually pretty prevalent in Wisconsin and a lot of areas, especially apples, right? Did not do better. But I think that apples are a lot of work to eat, and the rest of these are pretty easy to eat. So that factors largely into this, right? So this is what I came up with, and then my poster then that I make as a result of that is all based off of these metrics. So this way, this has nothing to do with my opinion, but with an objective rationale I used to put this all together. All right. So I hope this was helpful to you. I apologize for it being a little long. But, if we're going to get to the bottom of this and understand it, that it's kind of got to be that way. All right. Thank you.